Edo, welcome to another edition of No Choftes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your nunna. Please smash that like button. If you got any comments, leave them in the description, unless you want to put them in the live chat right now. We've got the super chat as well, which is great. All the donations really help the channel. So I'd like to thank everyone for their support and everyone that's been tuning in since the beginning, or even if you've been tuning in for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Now, this is going to be a bit of a sensitive pod, to be honest. I don't really want to lighten, or should I say darken the mood and make people feel a bit rubbish. But this is effectively a pod to react to the Dele Alli interview that was given to the Overlap to Gary Neville, where Dele Alli, a very talented footballer who made his debut for MK Dons at the age of 16, joined Tottenham, had a remarkable spell there, and his career just went down and down and down and down. And we saw the Amazon documentary, how Jose Mourinho sat him down and he said, look, I don't know who this is. I don't know whether it's Dele Alli or Dele Alli's brother. 1 minute I'm 20 years old, next minute I'm 56 years old, and the time flies, and you need all that kind of stuff. But Dele Alli has had a very troubled life. And Dele Alli, who ended up at Everton, then went to Besiktas, and now he's back at Everton. He's been recovering from injury. He dropped a bombshell. He dropped a very big bombshell. And he opened up about his mental health. He opened up about his life and the trauma that he experienced as a youngster. You're talking about a lad, how is he now, 20, 28? He's got to be 28, if not a little bit younger than that. You're talking about a lad that was very open about the struggles that he went through as a child. To talk about being sexually abused, molested at 6 years old by a friend of his mum, by being forced to sell drugs at 8 years old, to be abused physically by his mum, to be hung off a bridge at 11 years old by someone in his estate or the area that he lives. You're talking about a lad that was sent to Africa by his alcoholic mum to learn discipline, whatever that means. Unfortunately for Dele, he ended up being adopted by a family that looked after him, that really nurtured him, and have supported him through thick and thin. But the thing is, this is typical of a normal person that has been through a lot in their life. And as you get older, you kind of reflect on things that you've done as when you're younger, or what you did yesterday. And you need to hold yourself accountable for your actions, whether it be what you say and what you do. And Dele Alli has certainly made some mistakes in his playing career, but he seems to be a lad that is very misunderstood and has been through a lot. There are people out there that have been through the same, if not a little bit less, that have actually ended their lives because they haven't been able to cope with it. And Dele Alli used football as a coping mechanism, which I'm guessing a lot of us do, really. If you really deep it, we're football fans and we do become emotionally invested in our team. And a loss obviously affects us. There have been times where I've been absolutely bloody miserable after a defeat and not wanting to talk to anyone. And it sounds a bit pathetic, doesn't it, when you deep it? Because our problems in comparison are nothing, really, unless you're going through some serious problems. So that's why we use football as a form of escapism. And that's what Dele Alli has done throughout his career. Now, this leads me on to a lot of the things that we've been saying on this pod over the past few years, whether it be praising players or criticizing players. And I'll be the first to admit that I have singled out a lot of players for their performances, for their behavior on and off the field. And I think when you deep it and you really listen to the words that Dele Alli said, you can't turn around and say, they're just footballers, they're earning X amount of money. What do they, why should we sit here and feel sorry for them because they don't really care? I'm pretty sure the majority of them actually do care about their results, care about performances, care about winning trophies. And I'm sure there are a lot out there who just take everything for granted. Now, on this pod, we have been critical. I'm going to use that term because that's the only term I can use right now without getting too deep into it. But we've been very critical of the likes of Bezos, Barker, Lesiax, a few other players as well. And reflecting on the things that I've said anyway, it's probably the right time for me to actually apologize to a lot of people, and those players especially, because, look, I've been involved in football for close to 12 years. I've done profiles on mental health and worked alongside various charities. And you kind of lose focus when you become invested in a football club. And when you're doing a podcast, granted, you want to be entertaining. Granted, you want people to be watching your shows and you feel yourself with a sense of pride for doing that. But when you deep it, especially with this podcast, the amount of influence that we have and how things that we say can either be misconstrued, misunderstood, or even taken as gospel, we have a responsibility. And I think I have been irresponsible with a lot of the things that I've said in the past. But then watching what Dele Alli had to say and putting things into perspective, it makes you wonder, these players that we've been critical of over the past year or so, they might have similar problems, or they might have problems that are affecting them that may not be as bad as Dele Alli if you put it down on paper, but from a mental perspective, that could be the reason why a lot of them have been playing or behaving a certain way. Bezos, I've been very, very critical of, and I've said what I had to say about him, and I should apologize to him because clearly things were going on in his life. I think anyway. I'm just assuming here, given his performances last season and given how he's had a very, very good preseason so far. He's done okay, I think, anyway. And again, I think we need to hold ourselves accountable on this pod, and we need to be more positive towards players. And again, I'll be a hypocrite if I said that other people should follow our lead because, as I said, I've been critical of them. But I think moving into this new season, we need to be very mindful. We need to take things into account. And granted, we're not going to stop being critical of people's performances. I think I took things a little bit too far. And I hold myself accountable for it. And I hold myself responsible for the things that I say. And again, I couldn't easily use the heat of the moment card, and we're emotionally invested in our team and blah, 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 blah. Especially after loss, we're angry, we're volatile, we want to take things out on people. And on one hand, I'm thinking, is it wise to do a post-match reaction after a defeat? But at the same time, this is what we do as football fans, right? Whether it be meeting your friends at a coffee shop or a restaurant or at a bar or just going to each other's homes and talking about football, especially after a loss, you're going to behave that way. But again, it goes back to what I said about us having a responsibility. So I don't know if any of the players are watching. I'm sure one or two of them might be. On behalf of the No Chofters, I'd like to apologize for the way that we have, or I have been. I'm not gonna put the boys in that category because it's not fair because they're not here to speak their truths. So I think next season we're going to come with a completely different attitude, more like the attitude we had in 2020, 2021, where we were positive irrespective of the results. You know, we went through a barren spell where we didn't win a game for 5 or 6 games. I think it was 8 games, 8 without a win, 5 without a goal, or something like that. And we didn't turn on the players. And I think, again, with everything that's happened at the club for the past couple of seasons, it's understandable to be frustrated, but we need to hold ourselves accountable and be responsible. And when I say I mean me. Again, as I said, I can't talk on the boys because they have their own responsibilities and they will have their own things to say. But the whole Dele Alli situation shook me. I'm not going to lie. It really did. Because look, I have worked with footballers who were molested by their football coaches when they were kids. David Bell, Paul Stewart, Ian Ackley, Steve Waters, Andy Woodward. These people I know. And I'll never forget when Paul Stewart wrote his book, Paul Stewart used to play for Liverpool, and Spurs scored a goal in the 1991 FA Cup final for Spurs. So he's a pretty big name in the UK. But when I did the interview with him many years ago about his book, and he was telling me about being groomed by his coach, it fills you with fear. It really does. And to know that it's happening on your own doorstep makes it even worse. And I think this is a lesson for all of us. We need to be very, very mindful who we trust our children with, who we trust anyone, or how we trust anyone. And again, this isn't me turning into some kind of beacon of morality or anything. I just think that these things need to be spoken about, because I don't think they're spoken about enough. Sam is my guy. Sam can talk about mental health all day, man, because he and I have spoken about these things on numerous occasions. You know, I turned to Sam a few months ago, actually, last month, because I was feeling really bad, really shitty about myself. But people like Sam are good people to have around, because they will back you and they'll give you the advice that you either need to help you get over whatever it is that you go through, or to give you the advice that you need to snap out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And going back to what Dele did, I think that's extremely brave for someone so young, because he's young, for him to speak his truth, to say that he's been in rehab. You're talking about a lad that became addicted to sleeping pills. It's very dangerous. Sleeping pills are probably just as effective or as dangerous as cocaine, because sleep is the cousin of death, right? You overdose on those, same effect as coke, right? So again, I think this is something that we all need to really take into consideration before we really go off on one on players. I know social media can be toxic. Social media is great on the one hand, because you're able to voice your opinion and have fun, but at the same time, you don't know who's watching. And there could be some players that genuinely care what is said about them on social media, and it affects them. Now, I repeat, I have been critical of many players, and there are some players at the moment at our club who are being picked on by people because they feel they're not up to par, they're not up to standard. But when you're constantly berating them on social media, on forums, maybe you should just think about the effect that it would have on them, not just for their performance on the field, but from their personal standpoint, from their personal lives. Because let's get it right, it's very easy to pick up your phone and lambast someone and criticize them on social media when you're hiding behind a screen or a keyboard. But would you do that to them in front of their face? I don't think you would. I don't think anyone would. And it's not about being brave enough to say something to their face. I think the fact is you just wouldn't do it. It's not in your nature to do it. So if it's not in your nature to say something to their face, why would you do it on social media? You could argue that a lot of these people are quite young, impressionable, and maybe they're going through some kind of genetic change. Maybe they've got the testosterone levels are changing, or they're becoming from men into children. I don't know. But even still, we need to, as adults, we need to hold ourselves accountable for everything that we do and everything that we say. So as opposed to picking on certain players because they haven't impressed you in a friendly game, or maybe you just don't like their hairstyle or whatever, I think it's time that we as supporters start being more open-minded and being less reactionary, less toxic, less fractious. It doesn't help anyone. It really doesn't. And you know what? I'm just going to say this. We can even say the same for the administration. We could even say the same for the people that I've been critical of. Because look, I don't know Grigori, I don't know Darbuluzi, I don't know Babastav, I don't know them personally, I don't know what's going on in their lives. And on the one hand, you can say, well, they've really hurt the club. But on the flip side, they're still human beings. And have they done anything ridiculously heinous for us to say we don't really like them at all? Are they rapists? Not that I know of. Are they pedophiles? Not that I know of. Okay, it seems that it would appear that they've got their finances on top of their heads. But at the same time, when you flip it, they're family people. They've got kids, possibly grandchildren, I don't know. So all the things that you say and you throw crud at them on social media, just be very, very careful, very careful. And again, this isn't me being a hypocrite because I've done exactly what I say you guys shouldn't. Not to the extent where I've been threatening to kill people or do all sorts to them. I've been bantering them and saying a few things that were a little bit distasteful, I'm not going to lie. But again, it's all about growth. It's all about perspective. And going back to what Dele Ali said, how do we know that there aren't players that we look up to or we are critical of, and maybe they're going through certain changes or certain stages in their lives? You know, I'm just gonna bring up Zaha because a lot of people have been very, very critical of Zaha, and to be honest, I'm sure he'll be the first one to admit, within good reason, because his performances have been substandard, especially the past year. But when you deep it and when you put things into perspective, you're talking about a lad that has been blighted by injuries for the past year and a half. In fact, since he joined us, he's been unlucky with injuries. And we expected the Zahario of Olympiacos to come to Omonoia and not only put up with the pressure of wearing the shirt, but put up with the pressure of expectancy. And he suffered injuries, and he's had injury setbacks, and he suffered with fitness. And this summer, he went to Belgium. Instead of going on holiday and sunning it up and, you know, just enjoying himself, he worked hard. And yet I'm seeing comments during the live streams of a friendly game which is just for fitness more than anything. No one cares about the results of a friendly game. What happens in July doesn't reflect what's going to happen the following May. And the amount of comments I see, he's not an Omonoia player, he's rubbish, he's this, he's that. Well, put yourself in his shoes. People are going to say, oh, well, he's privileged because he's playing for Omonoia. He should be proud to be an Omonoia. I'm sure he is. I'm certain he is, in fact. There is no way that Zahario gets on that pitch before every game and says, I'm going to drop a 4 out of 10. Who does that? No one does. And if any footballer goes with that mentality, either they don't belong in the game and they've got a bad attitude, or there's something seriously going wrong. Now, again, I don't know Zahario's personal life. I don't know Banayodis. I don't know his personal life. I don't know what goes on in his personal life. I don't know what happens in his private life. It's not my business. And I'm not suggesting for a second that something could be going on. But once again, you got to understand the psychology. When you're a footballer, that's all you've ever done in your life. That's all you've ever done. And that is your bread and butter. These are your dreams. Zaha is living his dream. But unfortunately, his dream has been hampered by injuries. Things that are beyond his control. I'm pretty sure if he had it his own way, he'd be injury-free. I don't think any player sits there and hopes that they get injured. There are players in the past who have killed themselves. This fucking fruit fly. Go away. He's coming back. He's off. This is my stream now. Me fighting a fly. Mr. Speedy. Lovely. What was I saying? There have been players who have actually ended their lives because they haven't been able to cope with the pressure. And it's tough. You know, if you Google Justin Fashanu was a footballer in the 80s, 70s and 80s. His brother was John Fashanu, used to play for Wimbledon. Justin Fashanu used to play for Norwich City. I think he played for Forest as well, if I'm not mistaken. But Justin Fashanu was one of the first openly gay footballers. I think he was the first. Anyway, the first openly gay footballer. And as you can imagine, he went through a lot, especially during that era. He came to the point where he couldn't cope. He couldn't cope with the mental trauma. He couldn't cope with everything that was going on in his life. Again, we don't know the full extent of what happened to him when he was a youngster. We don't know whether he was abused as a kid. He ended his life. He took his life. And for what? Because people in the streets and people in the stands were being abusive to him. You can call him weak as much as you want. But at the same time, exactly how many times must a person be abused or vilified or held back or even physically harmed before they say enough is enough and they can't cope with it? Now, again, I'm not saying that Zaha is doesn't have a strong mental. Um, he's not strong mentally. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that be very, very mindful as to how you address players, especially on social media. Because I said before, you wouldn't do that in public. So why would you do it behind the screen? I've actually never met Zaha, never met him. I remember a couple of years ago, I came to Cyprus and I went to Taverna with Roy. And as we were leaving, got in the car, I get a message from Zaha on Instagram. Goes, "Hey, was that you?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "Why didn't you come and say hello?" He said, "I wasn't sure." So the guy he's not one of those people to just stand up and approach people that he's never met before and have a conversation, even if they have spoken on social media before. So that shows you what kind of a guy he is. He's a quiet guy. You could tell on the pitch he's a quiet guy. You could tell off the field he's a quiet guy. For me, I think he's just an easy target for a lot of people. He's an easy target. So again, I think we need to hold ourselves accountable for the things that we do, myself included. Again, I'm not holding myself in a different section or putting myself in a different category to everyone else. I've been just as bad. I've been just as culpable. Probably not to the extent that other people have been, but again, I hold my hands up and I'll take responsibility for my actions. And this is going to change. Of course, you're going to get the 100-mile an hour Stel. You're always going to get that. You're always going to get the loud Stel. But I think next season, I think we need to really see what happened with Dele Alli, see how he spoke about his issues, and realize that, boys and girls, it's just a game. Sorry to say it, it's just a game. Because a person's life is worth much more than a game of football, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, and especially a young lad like Zaha. And this goes with the other players like Lang, who I've destroyed in the past. But again, I've chosen how to be critical. I haven't been personal with them. And that's the problem. A lot of people these days are very personal when it comes to voicing their opinions on social media. And it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. So yeah, this is something that I wanted to do after watching the pod yesterday, watching the Dele Alli one yesterday. But I figured, you know what, I'd rather gather my thoughts and think about how to communicate and articulate it to everyone. And I just hope that we can be a bit more level-headed, keep our feet on the ground a little bit moving forward, because it's very, very important that we do so. We've got our own share of responsibilities. We've got our own way of handling things. And granted, as I said before, we all have reacted a certain way after a bad performance or a bad loss. I'm not going to stop calling Bruno Mars, by the way. I just think it's a great surname. I think it's a great nickname to give him. Just saying. And I don't think he gets upset by it. I think he probably just laughs it off, to be honest. Probably thinks I'm an idiot, but whatever, man. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I don't know if anyone wants to put anything in the chat. Got loads of applause here from Sam. Ah, hello, Chris. Is that my cousin, Chris? Yeah, it must be, because he's the only one that calls me buddy. Buddy. Thank you, Gideon, Chris. So anyway, who's actually watching live? Don't forget to hit that like button. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Tell your nunna. Don't tell all the bad things. Here we go. I always remind parents when coaching about the power of asking how much fun their child had, regardless of the result, because ultimately, isn't that what the game should be about? I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong, Sam. As you know, when you're playing at a high level, results are the only thing that matter. Let's get it right. But when you're coaching kids, as you quite rightly said, kids are very impressionable, right? They can be easily influenced. As we saw with Dele Alli, the way that he was treated led him down a path that he couldn't erase. And as a coach yourself, you know the importance of being a mentor, being a role model for these kids. Because while their mum and dad take them to football and pick them up, and they're the people that are there for them behind the scenes, when it comes to football? Are they going to listen to their parents? Or are they going to listen to their coach? More often than not, you'd think that they listen to their coach, because why would they listen to their parents? They're not the ones on the training field with them. They're not the ones coaching them. So, of course, it's all about having fun at that age. I think you and I spoke about when I had a conversation with Tom Statham, who has been at Man United's academy since 1994. And he's the one that introduced me to the word adultized. And I think you know what I mean, Sam, but for the benefit of our viewers, adultized is when football is converted from a fun aspect to a strict draconian method, and it becomes adultized. When you're teaching an 8-year-old tactics, an 8-year-old doesn't care about tactics. They just want to kick a ball about. That's why when you see kids playing football in a playground, they're all chasing the ball. 20 kids chasing one ball. That's just kids having fun. That's just kids having fun playing football. That's how we all did it. Kicking the ball against the wall and this and that. Kicking the ball through your neighbor's window in their back garden, whatever. But when it becomes adultized, when kids are being taught tactics, or to put the ball into the channel, or find the half space, or find pockets of space, kids don't want to learn that. That's how football becomes adultized. So Sam is right. You need to talk to the parents about how much fun they're having. That's all it is, because when kids stop having fun, as we saw with Dele Alli, when the sport becomes less fun, you lose interest. Do you cancel the t-shirt? Oh, I don't think your t-shirt is offensive. I think it's a funny t-shirt, and I think the player that you made the t-shirt about would enjoy it as well. It is indeed. Hello, buddy. Mario, thank you for pointing this out. It's really getting out of the control of the situation. I'll be standing for him against any toxic people in the stadium. This shall be done by everyone. And this is it, Mario. This isn't Stel looking after his buddy. Do you know what I'm saying? This isn't Stel asking people to lay off him. It's the same with everyone. It's the same with every player. It's the same for Bezos. It's the same for Lang. All right, be critical. I've got no problem with people saying he had a bad game, or he should have done that, and he doesn't seem to be himself, or I don't have a problem with it. It's when you become personal. That's the problem. That's the issue that I have. Again, I don't have a problem with people being critical of a player's performance or how they've dropped, or because that's what we've been doing. And again, as I said before, I've pushed the boundaries a little bit, but a lot of people have got personal. It doesn't sit right with me, man. It really doesn't. Winning matters. It does. But the best teams, when enjoying the game, are far better as a unit. Feedback matters. And yes, sometimes it's direct. The issue is where it becomes the abuse or adultized. Thank you. Thank you. And I think this is another thing that a lot of academies in Cyprus and the UK are gradually understanding, that you cannot just lay into these kids on the touchline and give them a rollicking. Even as far as the age of 16, 17, you need to be very careful. Granted, you want to be authoritative, and you want them to understand the message, but that's the coach's job. That's the coach's job. That's what coaches are getting paid for. And to be honest, when any parent is being divisive and toxic on the touchline, it makes the job even more difficult for the coach, because not only are they trying to implement their game and their style and their strategy, when a player is on the touchline, then their parents are absolutely destroying them. They lose all motivation. So you're making the coach have to work double hard, not only to get the players' mentality back on track, but to boost their morale. That's just being destroyed by the people that are supposed to look after them. So it doesn't make no sense to me. It really doesn't. We're a community, fans, coaches, players of all ages. It's just a case of working out how to share your views. The issue is there are a lot of opinions shared as fact equals toxic mindsets. I agree, bro. And, I was never one of those people to to destroy Dele Alli, because I never really had a problem with him. I just felt that he was a player that went through a dip in form, lost his confidence, had the opportunity in Turkey. They destroyed him out there. He came back to England with Everton, because he was with Everton and then went out on loan, didn't he? Came back to Everton and he just disappeared. Lampard didn't play him. Dyche didn't. And then we find out that he was in rehab. Rehab. That's how deep it got with Dele Alli. Rehab. So I don't think that we have been... I don't think we've been toxic with our criticism. We have reacted a certain way to certain players, but I don't think we've been toxic to the point where we've got personal with them. Not that I remember anyway. Not that I remember. And if I did, I'm sorry. But I don't think I have anyway. I don't think the boys have either, because Roy and Chris are even more careful with what they say. I'm probably the biggest liability out of all of us, in all fairness. So yeah, that's all I had to say, really. As I said, it was something that was playing on my mind all yesterday and this morning. And had a few things to sort out work-wise today, so haven't had the chance to do a stream, but here we go. So, anyway, boys and girls, I think that's it for this episode. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your nonna, keep smashing that like button, please. If you're watching this not live or on repeat, there's still plenty of opportunity to put your comments there. Let me know what you think about the Dele Alli situation. Let me know what you think about what I've said about other players. Are our players or some of our players receiving some unfair criticism? Have we been or I been a problem? Oh, I need to know these things, because it's all about growth and it's all about development and it's all about learning. You can never stop learning. So if there's something that we need to improve on or I need to improve on, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to take on any criticism or any constructive criticism or anything, really. It's not a problem. So yeah, give us a follow on Instagram. As you can see, my Instagram is... I can never get it right there. I can never get it. That's my Instagram. And we shall be back very, very soon. So until next time, Yalla Shilla Kamwa, to get that one in because you love it. Come on.